Welcome back. It's Death Diary number 61. Yes, last time we talked about the magnificence that is the Shroud. However, this time we're going to go and touch on something that has kind of been touched upon before. I didn't do a Death Diary about it because at the time there was a notice that this would be worked on even more in the future. So today we're going to be talking about factions and specifically Indoctrination, Unrest, and faction interactions. Now, Indoctrination is a separate thing from the factions. It's a paid feature for native Indoctrination. We're going to go and dive right into that before we get to the faction items, shall we? So for those people that have played the game quite a lot and they've been messing around with uplifting species, well, not so much uplifting species, enlightening existing civilizations to the space age, specifically the FTL age, there's always a chance that, you don't look properly at the species in question and you guide them in such a way that they become fanatical purifiers. For those that have been watching my Mankind Prevails series, this is totally the case with one of the species that I am currently have as vassals in my empire. They were not vassals for a little while, but now they're technologically advanced enough to be called vassals, and I've been abusing the hell out of them, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, Indoctrination is a new observation station mission that allows you to educate primitives in your clearly superior way of thinking. Now, in order to do this, you will have to have an active native interference policies, and it will be available to all ethics. It also means that you can mold a species to your governing ethics, which is basically what you want. So basically all the pops on that planet would slowly but steadily over time migrate to the ethics that you want them to have, as in your own. And this will add a new little tick box on your native intervention screen. It also means that I am going to need to redo the alien infiltration video. It's one of the very first ones that I actually ever put on the channel, and it's woefully out of date, but we'll get to that at some point after the expansion is out. It's a paid feature. It comes up with like the whole Shroud stuff and all that thing in terms of paid features and stuff like that. So, but let's get on towards the 1.5 stuff. Let's see, you leave Utopia behind us. Because paid features are fine, not everybody likes the DLC model Paradox, and I totally understand that. However, let's take a look at the stuff that you will get for free in 1.5. So in Death Diary 54, a Death Diary that I did not cover on the channel specifically for this reason, they were talking about the changes in ethics and faction rework. Right now in the game, there is only negative factions in your game. They are generally people that want to split off from your empire. You need to invest influence points into them, making sure they are no longer a problem, etc., etc. This is going to be completely reworked, and I highly suggest you go and read Death Diary 54 for more details on that. However, after some testing and iteration, the devs have decided the new faction system doesn't really fit the rebellion style of factions. Consequently, they have separated into its own system called Unrest. Each planet has an Unrest value from 0 to 100 determined by local conditions and sometimes empire-wide effects. So what they're already implying here, there may be things like civil wars potentially in this. That would be kind of cool. But also, for instance, if you put an army on this on a planet, it will suppress the local population to have less uprising effects, or at least the unrest effect there, which is rather interesting in terms of how this system is going to work, and it could potentially also kind of crush your economy in terms of this. There is a big problem in the game right now in terms of minerals and energies. In the late game, you generally have way too much of it, and the addition of, for instance, the Dyson spheres, which are going to, these numbers are not final, quote unquote, add a significant amount of energy, up to 200, 300 energy per Dyson sphere, and yes, you can build multiples. So having a giant pool of energy is going to cause problems. Now, obviously, if your empire is not happy or there's unrest, then you're going to generate less energy. So this is a way of actually dealing with that. It feels like it's going to be hand in hand with the unhappiness values that you can have in your empire as well. When such a group begins to organize, we'll get an event warning of the situation that gives you some time and try to get the unrest under control landing armies, for instance, to suppress the local population. If you fail to do so, the situation will escalate, resulting in events of increasing severity, such as hunger strikes, riots, and possibly even full-blown armed revolts. And those will replace the current hunger strikes and riots that are currently in the game under factions that are being handled by influence. And there's a picture here about Unrest. Minerals minus 15%. Basically, every single output is down by 50%. And it's actually halved by armies as well. So minus 60 of armies here in this particular example. And unhappy slaves are generating 90% unrest, and it's being offset by those armies. So if you're a slaver empire, you definitely want to have suppression armies on standby. And I kind of hope that we're going to see, like, commissars. Well, we do have commissar squads already, but they're more of a modifier as far as I can remember. Having something like a military police style thing to oppress your population, I'm not a fascist, it would be a good idea in this particular context. Let's take a move on here for faction interactions, which is also a free feature. Also mentioned in Dev Diary 54, I highly suggest you go and read it, was the ability to use your factions to shift your governing ethics. Now, last week in the Shroud episodes, we talked about how the Shroud in Psionics is only available to the particularly religious or spiritualist ethics. With 1.5, you'll be able to drift to new ethics over a long period of time. And how is this actually done? Well, every ethic has an associated faction within your empire, and over time they will start to pop up. So, for instance, you'll have a supremacist faction that do not like xenophobes. So, if you support them, you will float towards the direction of xenophobia, etc., etc. And this is only a small example of every single ethics that is in the game. So you could totally start out as a post-scarcity happy utopia and end up in a despotic, alien-cleansing dictatorship. If you want a current 1.4 example of this, go and watch the Mankind Prevail series that I'm currently running. It's up to 70 episodes now, so it's going to be a bit of a slog to get to with 20 minutes each, but you get the general idea. But yeah, as soon as there's a faction available, you can go and select that faction, see what their specifics are, how much attraction they have by the local population, and then actually see how many people are, or how many pops are part of that population. And also the bonuses that you get with that. So every single faction will have their own issues. Now you can embrace this faction, which permanently change your governing ethics. It does cost you a significant amount of influence to do so. You can promote a faction, so you can drift into a certain direction, or you can suppress a faction in order to not drift in that direction and stay where you are. Obviously, ethics divergence is a pretty big modifier with this, so if everybody's happy in your empire and you're, for instance, a militarist, then most likely everybody will be militarist, and you can crush pretty much everybody under your boot quite easily. In addition to this, you will also get influence points from these factions. So right now we do have a problem with the Frontier Outpost sucking up quite a lot of the influence points that you can generate. And considering the factions right now also suck up quite a lot of influence points trying to suppress them, it only makes sense to have a modifier in place to have a positive faction and generate influence from that. And that is currently the case. Embracing a faction, which will permanently change your governing ethics right now, as in the current beta of the expansion, it will cost you 250 influence. So I believe that is the same amount as changing your government type. Embrace modifier will add it for 120 months and will give you the following effects: faction happiness plus 20%. So it's a good idea to start promoting a faction first and get a large chunk of your population onto that faction and then embrace that faction in order to get the plus 20% happiness bonus for 120 months. So that's 10 years. But yeah, that will be all for now. This was Dev Diary 61 on Indoctrination, Unrest, and Faction Interactions. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other, because next time, well, each other becomes a whole new term, because we're going to be talking about the ridiculousness of hive minds.